spring day, and it's nice to see all these young faces from the 4-H, and we would ask one of the representatives to lead us in the pledge. So.
Please stand. Remove all your hats and hoods. Place right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A few items on the agenda. We're looking forward to hearing from the 4-H and the leaders. And we got a few items before that. It may be educational, so hopefully, won't be real late, but hopefully you get as much knowledge as you can. And the first item of business will be roll call. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. President. Division 6, Audrey Miller. Division 5, Robert Paris.
Here.
Division 3, Frank Donato.
Here.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Here.
Division 1, Drew Mercy.
Here.
Division 7, Gary Van Dam. Division 4, George Lane.
Yep, here.
General Manager Knutson.
Here.
General Counsel Jim Markman.
Here.
And Holly Hughes present.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to item number 4. So if anybody's listening in, we always like to hear who's with us, and you can identify yourself. We'd love to hear who's listening in.
Kathy McLaren, Palmdale Water District.
Hey, Kathy, welcome. Thank you.
Brandon Clandry, Water Master.
Well, welcome. Thank you.
White Fence Farms 3, Jack Cephas.
Hey, Jack, it's always welcome.
Thank you.
Benjamin Stewart, RCSD.
Again, welcome. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number 5, public comment. So anybody is welcome to make a public comment. It is not further on the agenda. Okay, please. Yes, John.
In 202, 203, LA County did a environmental impact report on injected extraction wells. And at that time, they were going to be using AVEK water. And they were putting in about 15, 20 wells. What I'd like to get is an update of what, if anybody remembers all the way back there, what transpired. I know they put in some of their production wells, but in their extraction wells, but in their injection wells, I've heard nothing about it. Maybe Matt, you commented on that EIR, if I'm not mistaken. I also commented on that EIR. And you weren't with AVEK at the time. But if Keith or George or Frank, do you remember anything about that?
Somewhat, but the details do not.
John, this is Keith. I remember a little bit about it also, and I know it had to be approved by the regional board, but that's about all. Thank you.
But you never supplied any water to them at all to inject?
This director, not at all. I do remember that the water quality from that was positive, because the Clay County Division 440 went ahead and approved the budget, and they got it approved by the Board of Supervisors. And then after that, I think it was just a test. So we'd have to go, I think, dig up the records of that test so you could see what the results was.
Was that because of the THMs?
Well, I know, like, I mean, I know there was nothing derogatory from it because we would have had, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not being critical of wanting to supply the water, Frank, so. Oh, okay, perfect. Well, I just want to know if they.
But the water quality improved, that's all I remember, because there was arsenic in that water, and D40 said, we want to try this program, and I was under the impression it was successful.
So,
And is that something maybe
They
you
never
can
injected.
yeah, I think,
search and see if it's,
I
if you have
think,
any records or if we can, figure out what happened, what took place.
yeah, do you want to comment first, Director Pierce?
Maybe this will solve it. John, tomorrow, the Water Master meeting is 10 a.m. Carolina, who is the head of Waterworks 40, will be there. So that might be a good question to ask at the Water Master to Carolina. It's kind of interesting for the Water Master board to hear too, if you're going to be around.
Yes, I don't know if I'm going to go out, get out of the house again tomorrow after today. And
You can zoom in.
Okay, so anyway, that's helpful.
Or we can ask her, we should be in the meeting.
Yeah,
tomorrow.
Yeah, we can ask her, and we can do some research on it. It was quite some time ago, 20 plus years ago. And like John said, I do remember the project. When I was at Palmdale Water District, we commented on the EIR for the project. So I don't remember the specifics about the comments, but we could see what information AVEK has and report back to John.
I would appreciate that, Matt.
Yeah.
Was that all right with you?
Matt, also, the person that led that from D40 was Adam and Ricky. So Adam was very involved with that whole process.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think John was going to speak, but I think that they only did a pilot study. They never did the full blown implementation of what the plan was.
And was that on M?
Yes, M and 7th
Street East?
Yeah, roughly 10th Street. Yeah.
Or West, excuse me.
Yeah.
Okay. Second question, and you can answer this one, or Peter can. Okay. Lockheed, that's in the AVEK district. Am I correct?
Plant 42.
No,
Lockheed. Lockheed is within the sphere of AVEK, but is served by Palmdale Water District.
So you have a willing agreement with
Correct.
Palmdale Water District?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Thanks a lot, man.
Yep. You're welcome.
John, we'll try to get more information on it. Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have any other, comments?
We do. We have somebody on the line, John Monson with the Sierra Club would like to make a comment.
Okay, we appreciate, hearing your comments, so it's open to you.
Well, thank you very much. I just want to make sure you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. President Lane and directors, my name is John Munson, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Sierra Club, the nation's oldest and largest grassroots environmental organization. I want to provide an update on the status of the Cadiz water mining project. On December 20th, 2024, reality caught up with Cadiz. The California State Lands Commission unanimously rejected the company's request for a pipeline lease for a section of what Cadiz calls its northern pipeline. This pipeline that Cadiz wants to use to deliver water to your groundwater bank. The commission's decision wasn't just a rejection of a lease, it was a rejection of Cadiz's credibility. Commission Chair Malia Cohen, who is also the state controller, raised serious concerns about the company's financial instability, citing its mounting debt and ongoing losses. And I quote, "We have no assurance this project will ever come to fruition," she said. "I'm not willing to gamble with the taxpayers' money." Close quote. She also condemned Cadiz's longstanding pattern of secrecy, pointing out that the company failed to notify the commission of its future pipeline plans as required. She added, leases are issued at the discretion of the commission in accordance with the law on a case-by-case basis. In other words, public relations campaign and water district lobbying aren't enough. This deep skepticism from the commission throws the future of the Northern Pipeline into serious doubt. Before Cadiz can move forward, it must secure a lease, navigate other regulatory hurdles, and most critically, comply with California Water Code Section 1815 and prove to the commission that its project will not harm the fragile desert environment or indigenous communities. This is a test Cadiz cannot pass. That's why the company tried to argue before the commission that the law didn't apply to it. But the commission formally informed the company that it was wrong and that the law does apply. So let me be clear, no matter how many times Cadiz tries to rebrand itself and reinvent itself, it remains the same company that is pushing the same outdated desert damaging water scheme, one that has failed to move forward very much over the decades. As environmental justice and civil rights leader Dolores Huerta said late last year, and I quote, "I have long advocated for water solutions that prioritize people, especially disadvantaged communities and the environment, which is why I strongly oppose Cadiz." The Sierra Club worked hard to pass Proposition 4 last year, which provides nearly $4 billion for improving water supply and storage. We support sustainable solutions to our water challenges. California's water future depends on real, sustainable solutions, not corporate pipe dreams. At the end of the day, Cadiz isn't offering water security. It's just selling a mirage. Thank you so much for letting me comment today, and have a good meeting.
Thank you much. And you made good comments. And the board, last week, there was a motion to go ahead with the funding for the study, but we did not vote to endorse the project at this point. And so, there's still a lot of information is going to be coming in. Do we have his contact information?
President Lane, can I say something, President Lane? So the comment was regarding the Cadiz project, not the Delta Conveyance project.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have his contact information.
John Monson,
I can send it to you, Secretary Hughes. We talked earlier today. I can just email it to you.
that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your help. I think there's another speaker, by the way.
There's somebody with their hand up, Neil Desai, if you wanna, is that okay, George?
But as far as the Cadiz, AVEK is not doing anything at this point. We're not, it's not under any consideration.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you much. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Neil Desai, is that you?
Yes, it is. Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Well, good evening, directors. Hope you all are doing well and having a really great week so far. My name is Neil Desai. I'm the Pacific Region Director for the National Parks Conservation Association. We have been advocating for our national parks for over 100 years, and we have 2 offices in the California desert. Our organization was also part of the coalition that helped pass Proposition 4 last year, which allocates billions in new dollars to help water agencies such as yours and others reach their water reliability goals. So I hope your folks are able to benefit. I too am commenting today on the Cadiz water mining project proposal that from what I have seen last from 2023, AVEK appears to be partnering with, despite it being a dead end. For decades, the Cadiz Corporation has sought to pump ancient groundwater from our Mojave Desert and export it for sale. Despite being around for decades, Cadiz has not been built because its math simply does not add up. And this problem with the math proposes injustice to both people and the environment. So Cadiz wants to pump 50,000 acre feet of groundwater a year for 50 years from an aquifer below Mojave Trails National Monument and the Mojave National Preserve, 2 of our nation's crown jewels and places that I hope each and every one of you have had a chance to visit or might be able to visit in the future. But state and federal agencies have determined that the recharge of the aquifer is as low as 2,000 acre feet a year, which means that the project would overdraft the aquifer by a rate of 25 times each year, depleting the water table in one of the driest places in North America and eliminating the rare and incredibly important surface water springs that are fed by the aquifer. It's also people who are threatened by being promised water only to realize that it's not a reliable water supply and the taps have to be turned out. And it was this significant risk of harm to people and the environment that led the legislature in 2019 to pass legislation called SB 307 under Governor Newsom's leadership that effectively blocks Cadiz. In a letter from 2023, California's U.S. Senators Padilla and Feinstein wrote this about Cadiz, and I quote, Department of the Interior experts, including the U.S. Geological Survey and the National Park Service, as well as peer-reviewed scientific analyses, have repeatedly warned of the significant and irreversible impacts that Cadiz's project could have on the desert's fragile ecology and surrounding communities, end quote. Last thing I'll say is that for Cadiz to get water to your high desert groundwater bank, it needs to convert a gas pipeline to a water pipeline, which they call the Northern Pipeline. And to do that, Cadiz is required to undergo federal NEPA review, state CEQA review, and the state review under Water Code 1815 that was set up by the 2019 legislation. Cadiz has started none of these processes, and any of them can individually block Cadiz. And as John Munson noted, in December, the State Lands Commission, which is made up of the governor's representative, the lieutenant governor, and the state controller, voted unanimously to reject a lease application for Cadiz for this pipeline. So I think a gentleman earlier on the board just mentioned that you all are not engaging with Cadiz. It's unclear to me where things stand with AVEK and the company since the 2023. I don't know if the term is an agreement, but I believe it's called an agreement that was reached between your agency and the company. But I would welcome at some point an update. And thank you so much for your time today. I hope you have a great rest of your meeting.
Yeah. And again, thank you. You made very good comments, but just kind of reiterate, we're not dealing with Cadiz and nothing's in the planning stage. Nothing is foreseen. We did sign a very, very, very general letter, and I'm going to ask our general manager to comment on that some time ago. I think we would cooperate maybe on the easements, but again, I don't think AVEK is going to be doing anything with Cadiz unless something really changes. Matt, do you have any comments?
Yeah, good evening. This is Matt Knutson. So in 2023, AVEK did sign or execute a MOU or Memorandum of Understanding between AVEK and Cadiz. And in that Memorandum of Understanding, it talks about a potential wheeling agreement where if Cadiz had a willing buyer of their water supply and they needed to wheel that water supply through AVEK's existing water system, that we would cooperate as long as there was no impact to the AVEK customers for that wheeling of water. So that's in a nutshell what the 2023 MOU states.
And you're welcome to a copy of that memorandum right there. But again, we're not doing anything, and your comments are very, very well. And just if you can leave your contact information with the board secretary, we would appreciate it.
I will. Thank you. Appreciate you all.
Okay. Thank you much. Right there. Is there anyone else? The public comments. Okay, we'll move on. Item number 6, adoption of agenda, and it's a board order 6A1. So motion and second would be in order.
Mr. President, I'll move on 6A1 to adopt the agenda.
We have a motion by Dr. Miller.
Yes, second it, Director Donato.
Okay, we have a second by Dr. Van Dam. Okay, if there's no further discussion or comments, Madam Secretary, if we could have a roll call.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Sue Mercy,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam, George Lane.
Yes, motion carried. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 6. The consent calendar, we just have one item. 781, approval of the minutes of March 11th. We've all had a chance to review those. If there's no questions or comments, the board order would be in order. Motion would be in order.
Mr. President, I will move on 7A1.
Director Miller, may I have a motion?
Mr. President, this is Rob, I'll second that motion.
Second, Director Paris. There's no further discussion or comments, Madam Secretary?
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris.
Yeah.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam, George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. Thank you. Moving right along to new business, we have a presentation of Wells Fargo, securities. It is gonna be for information, only. And so we'll turn that over to Matt or Teresa, who's gonna take this?
I can do a brief introduction. So this evening, we have two individuals from Wells Fargo joining us tonight. We have John Williams and Nicole Servey. And we invited them this evening just to give an informational only market update for the board. So take it away, John.
You're welcome. Where are you from? Los Angeles, San Francisco?
Thank you, President Lane, Vice President, Directors, and staff for Wells Fargo. We do thank,
We can't hear them.
can you hear me now?
I don't think the volume is.
You want to take 1 second? Is that system working or not?
Is it on?
Yeah, it's on now.
There you go. Okay,
Okay.
I will start again. Thank you, President Lane, Vice President, Directors, and staff for having Wells Fargo present today. We do provide banking and investment services. I specifically work with staff, Matthew and Teresa, on a day-to-day basis, weekly basis for their investments and investment strategy. Today, I'm here to introduce Nicole Servey. She is one of 12 economists at Wells Fargo. We have 217,000 employees, but only 12 can say they're economists at Wells Fargo. She's traveled from the East Coast. She's from Charlotte, North Carolina, and she's here to give us a U.S. economic update.
Thank you, John, and thanks to the board for having me.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. So as mentioned previously, I am Nicole Servey. I am an economist from Wells Fargo. I'm based in Charlotte, North Carolina. Thank you for hosting me. My brother actually lives in Long Beach, so I get to squeeze in a visit. So thank you.
Great.
So let's go on to the next slide here. Thank you, Secretary, for going on. So let's start with the 10,000 feet view on what's going on with the U.S. economy. My purpose for today is just to speak to, hopefully give you a little bit of a level set of how GDP growth, how the economy in general has fared, and then give you some of Wells Fargo's base case views where we think the Fed will be, where we think inflation will be, and hopefully that'll help you navigate this very uncertain landscape that we are in at present. So let's start with the 10,000 feet view with US real GDP growth. So that's the chart on the left here. What you can see is that this is the total goods and services produced in the United States adjusted for inflation, and you can see that the growth rates have been quite robust. So in the fourth quarter, we saw real GDP growth of 2.3%. And to give you some context here, since the pandemic, we've been averaging around, we being US economy writ large here, we've been averaging close to 3% of total economic growth. Before the pandemic struck, we were around 2.4% following the Great Recession. So not only is the US economy larger than it was before the pandemic struck, but we're also growing at a faster rate holistically. And if we think about that context and the backdrop for the Federal Reserve as a central bank of the United States, they want to make sure that they preserve healthy growth. And they now that they know that interest rates are at a restrictive level. So for some background here, we've seen that the Fed, after they dropped interest rates to zero to cope with the pandemic, they hiked aggressively 525 basis points in 2022, 2023. They held at a restrictive level for the past few years. And then you've seen that they've dialed it back a little bit. The upper bound of the federal funds rate today is at 4.5%, but that is still elevated clearly relative to where we were before the pandemic. But the Fed has actually had a few meetings here where they've held steady. And some of the reason that the Fed feels confident in holding steady at their current rate of 4.5%, which they acknowledge is a restrictive interest rate, especially for many decision makers across the economy, is that overall economic growth has held up despite interest rates being elevated. If we think about how the Fed actually sets monetary policy, though, they have a congressional mandate of one, low and stable inflation, generally considered 2% price growth, and the other side is maximum employment. So if we go to the next slide here, what we've seen is that we're making progress towards that 2% inflation target. The Federal Reserve, when they are targeting inflation, they use the PCE deflator, which is slightly different from the Consumer Price Index, but it's just a different measure of inflation. And so what we see here is that after the PCE deflator peaked at around 7% growth, annual price growth. That's the highest that we've seen since the 1980s in the United States. We've seen a material amount of progress. The PCE deflator today is closer to 2.5%. So that means that the overall price level in the United States in terms of price growth, we're slowing down in terms of how fast prices are increasing on an annual basis. Now, the Fed, as we've stated previously, they want to get to 2% inflation because that's what they consider low and stable inflation. And we have not made progress towards 2% precisely over these past few months here. While we've come down from 7%, we're kind of stuck at 2.5%. And this is another reason that the Fed wants to hold at their current rate. They want to wait and see. They would like to see a little bit more progress towards 2% in terms of inflation. If you look to the chart on the right, this is giving you a little bit of a composition of what's going on underneath the surface. When I talk about inflation, that's everything we consume, right? Goods, services, you name it. And what we've seen over these past few months is the biggest drivers of inflation has been the service sector. And if we think about some of the fiscal policy questions, the trade policy questions, a lot of those, especially on the tariff side, are likely to affect goods. And if we look at the composition of inflation, what's actually been helping drive the overall level of price growth down has been deflation or disinflation in the goods sector. So if we have a reversal in goods price growth, if we start to see some markups on goods, that could pose some upside risk to the overall level of inflation here. So we have the Federal Reserve holding steady at 4.5 just to see how things play out. Let's go to the next slide. Now, as I mentioned previously, the Fed, they have a dual mandate. They need to not only prioritize achieving price stability via 2% inflation, they also need to achieve what they call maximum employment. It's a theoretical economic concept. We basically want to see healthy job growth. What we've seen over these past few years is that the rate at which we're adding jobs has slowed materially. So the chart on the left here is overall non-farm payroll growth in the United States. On a month-to-month basis, the bars are up. We're still adding jobs. Just the rate at which we're adding has slowed materially. If you look at the 3-month moving average, that's around 200,000 jobs added per month. That's about where we were before the pandemic. But if you think about people who are entering the labor supply, so people who are recently graduated, maybe people who dropped out to come back in for whatever reason, they're having a hard time finding a job right now because job growth on a net basis is very low. And so we have seen the unemployment rate tick up across the economy. Over these past few months here, it's stabilized around 4%. But directionally, as you can see in the chart on the right, we have seen the unemployment rate move about 0.5 percentage point from where it was in its low in the summer of 2022. And so for the Fed's perspective, they want to make sure that we don't see a further weakening in the labor market. As it stands today, the labor market is still solid. We're still seeing job growth. The unemployment rate has stabilized. But as we can see from the chart on the left, let's call it the cushion has thinned here. We're seeing that job growth has materially slowed down from where it was before. And the Fed wants to make sure that we aren't risking that further deterioration. Let's go on to the next slide. If we think about some of the underlying dynamics in the labor market, as job creation has slowed down, as folks who are trying to enter the labor market are having a hard time finding a job, their friends are aware that there's less job opportunities out there. We've seen that labor market churn has really slowed down. So the quits rate, that's the blue line in the chart on the left. You can see that that has fallen. And I like to call this chart the unwinding of the Great Resignation. We had a period of really stark labor market churn at a time when we were coming out of the pandemic. An employer's natural response to that, in order to attract and retain workers, is to hike their wages. We had a high inflationary environment. A lot of workers needed higher wages in order to make sure that they had real purchasing power at home. And so as more recently, as we've seen that labor market churn has started to slow down here, that pressure on employers to try to hike their wages to attract and keep those people on their payroll has started to ease. And so we've seen that labor compensation growth, so that's the chart on the right of the employment cost index, that has started to slow down. If you look across the economy, and I've heard this from client presentations as well, there's definitely businesses out there who are still raising their wages and salaries at a faster rate than they were before the pandemic. If you look at the employment cost index on an annual basis, it's around 4%, right? And that's 2 percentage points higher than what we were before the pandemic. And so there's still a little bit of a cost adjustment here, but the overall rate of labor cost growth has slowed down. And that's a good sign for the Fed, because if we think about labor costs and its pass through to inflation, especially in the services sector, there's a lot of service intensity firms who are labor intensive. If their labor cost growth is starting to slow down, that might mean that those firms are going to slow down their final selling prices. And so this is another sign that hopefully that strong boost that we're seeing from services inflation will slowly start to ebb here in these coming months. Let's go to the next slide. But who is on the other side of that paycheck? So we said that although employers are feeling less pressure to hike their wages aggressively, what you've seen is that on the other side of that transaction, your employees, your consumers, they're starting to get less disposable income growth on a month-to-month basis. So the blue line here is real personal income. So this is taking all the types of income that you would get, wages, salaries, capital gains, you name it, and it's adjusted for inflation. So what we've seen is that as wages and salaries growth has started to slow down, real disposable income growth is slowing down as well. So what that means for the consumer is that you likely are going to see some slower growth in consumer spending this year. And that's important for the US economy because 70% of our GDP is determined by consumption of households. So what you can see in this chart here, the red line, that is real personal consumption. So that's just the formal term for overall consumer spending. That has been quite robust, even as income growth has been slowing down here over this past year. What we're likely to see going forward is as income growth is slowing actually behind the pace of consumption growth, you're likely going to see consumers pull back. We've already heard some earnings reports from retailers, big box retailers out there who are saying that they do not have as much pricing power today. They're seeing consumers start to trade down. And we are starting to see some early signs of consumer spending slowing. Now, we don't look for a contraction because real disposable income growth is still positive, but there's signs that there's not going to be the blockbuster growth rates of consumer spending that we've seen over these past few years. Let's go to the next slide. And so if we think about, okay, let's turn to what's going on now. If that's where we've been, what poses some risks to consumer spending going forward? The biggest risk today is uncertainty. So the chart on the left, this is just a gauge of how US businesses and consumers feel great uncertainty. And you can see that overall economic and policy uncertainty is the highest that it's been since the pandemic. It is higher than it was following the Great Recession. And so we have a ton of uncertainty. And what that can do is slow business decisions, it can slow consumer spending. It can influence behavior among businesses in particular, if we think about the trade component as well. And so what we've seen in that regard is that as there's been a lot of talk of tariffs, as tariffs on China have been implemented, we've seen that businesses in the United States have started to front run. So the chart on the right, this is showing you real industrial supplies imports. So across the economy, industrial supplies, this could be fertilizer, this could be finished metal shapes, it could be crude oil. Imports of these goods skyrocketed in January because businesses were trying to make sure that they were able to get inputs of durable goods that they could get on shore before the tariff struck. Let's go to the next slide. And so what happens when you have a surge in imports is kind of the exact opposite of what the presidential administration would like to see. The trade deficit here, which takes exports minus imports, actually widened to its largest on record in January because we had a surge in imports as businesses that felt uncertain about the degree of tariffs this year decided to front run and bring in imports to the extent that they could. And so we had the trade deficit actually widen to its largest on record, which, if we think about overall GDP growth, is a negative to GDP because GDP measures the domestic production of goods and services. Imports are foreign production of goods. If we import a lot, that puts some downward pressure on GDP growth. So it's likely that we're going to see an ugly Q1 GDP print because we've seen a surge in imports in the United States. Next one. And why are businesses acting this way? Well, as I mentioned previously, we've seen tariff policy really come to fruition here. So our forecast for the average tariff rate, so this is summarizing all the different policies that have been proposed, as I mentioned previously, tariffs on Chinese goods, Canada, Mexico, things like that. If you take the sum of all of those policies, you'll see the average trade weighted tariff rate in the United States rise to around 8 to 9%, which is the highest that it's been since the 1940s. And so we have a ton of tariffs. And when we think about how tariffs operate, mechanically, they are a tax on imports. And so they will raise the domestic price of imported goods. And so that is why you've seen a scramble among businesses to front run their imports to the extent that they are able. Next slide. And so, as I mentioned previously, when we think about levying a tax, so a tariff at the end of the day is a tax, that will have some macroeconomic consequences. What we see when we shock a macroeconomic model that we have at Wells Fargo is tariffs to this degree would impose a modest stagflationary shock on the US economy. Stagflation is a scary word. We say modest before that because this is not the stagflation that we saw in the 1970s, but you do see the unemployment rate rising at the same time as inflation rises. So this poses a challenge to consumers because you see that real disposable income growth is eroded because inflation is now stronger. You also have unemployment. So if you're laid off, not only do you have a negative income shock, but your dollar does not stretch as far because your price growth is stronger than it was previously. And so this can be a challenging situation for an economy to escape, especially when we think about it in the context of monetary policy, usually alleviates unemployment and inflation, usually not both at the same time. Let's go to the next slide. And so what I will say about those macroeconomic simulations there, so I don't want to get into the nitty gritty, but what those simulations showed is that inflation, instead of trending back down to 2% on a sustainable basis, you could get the CPI spiking to 3.5%. We'll say that that's likely an upper bound, right? You're going to be hard pressed to find an economist who's in favor of tariffs. I'll go on the record and say that. But what I can say is that there are offsets. You could have a stronger dollar. You could have inflation expectations from the University of Michigan survey. We saw some separate evidence from the Conference Board. No matter how you slice it, you've seen that consumers are buckling up for higher prices this year and next. But if we look to the market, so if you look at break-even rates for tips, for instance, those expectations over the next 5 years are largely constant at 2.42%. And so what we're seeing here is that consumers, they know that inflation is coming. They've responded aggressively in terms of their expectations. And what that suggests to economists is that you might see a pullback in spending, or you might see more spending today. If they think that prices will be higher tomorrow, it's kind of hard to predict that at the moment. But if you look to the market, the marketplace does expect, financial markets expect inflation to stay anchored around 2%. And so if we think about this from the context of the Fed is navigating some rocky waters here. They don't know who to listen to. And when we hear Federal Reserve policymakers out in the public, they'll often talk about both measurements and know that the risk to their inflation mandate is high because we know that consumers in particular don't think that inflation will be 2% over the long term. So let's go to the next slide. The other side of their mandate, as I mentioned previously, our forecast here is also a little bit lackluster. So I mentioned previously that we don't look for inflation to hit that 2% target over these next few years. Similarly, what we see on the employment side is that that's not a lot when you have 150 million employed at a given time. And so that will likely raise some alarm bells for the Fed that the labor market is starting to soften. We have the unemployment rate rising to 4.3% by the end of this year. And a lot of this is informed by the stress that tariffs will impose on employers. You get a little bit of a profit margin squeeze if your imported goods are more expensive. If you have consumers pulling back on spending, that's some lost revenue. And you also have some of the fiscal policy effects from the federal government reductions, workforce reductions, and that's having some spillover effects to the private sector as well. And so all of those effects suggest that the labor market is not likely to strengthen in 2025, which again will pose a risk to the Fed at a time when inflation is likely to strengthen at the same time. To the next slide. And so what is the Fed to do? They just had a meeting, luckily, last week, and they gave us a little bit of some clues on what they're thinking. And essentially what they said is we're in wait and see mode. Back in December, they said that they looked for 50 basis points of cuts this year. They held steady at that, 50 basis points of cuts. So 2 conventional 25 basis point cuts likely to come in the second half of this year is what the Fed presented at their meeting. What they also said is that tariffs historically tend to be a one-time shock to the price level. And so if we agree with that, that means that although inflation will stray away from their target, they think it'll be transitory. And so if they agree that inflation will be transitory, then they might want to lean more on that maximum employment side and try to lower interest rates in order to help maintain labor force growth. And so what we think is that although the Fed signaled 50 basis points last week, we think that they're going to be a little bit more dovish. They want to support the labor market. And so we have 70 basis points of easing baked into our forecast this year. So that would get you an upper bound federal funds rate of 3 3/4 by the end of this year. We look for them to hold at that rate through 2026. Let's go to the next slide. And so what does that imply for the yield curve? This is my last note here. What you can see is that hopefully we'll get to see, we're already seeing some normalization in the slope of the yield curve, but this year in particular, as employment growth slows down, that'll likely slow down overall GDP growth. Some of those factors on trade are going to weigh on GDP growth as well. And so that means that interest rates this year are likely to be a little bit lower than they will be next year. Next year, we expect growth to strengthen as some of those deregulation policies, tax expansions come into effect and help support the overall economy recover from this tariff, let's call it slowdown, that we're likely due in 2025. So with that, thank you. If I have some time for questions, I'd love to have. Yes.
When you see a 30-year fixed home.
Yes, so I actually have that forecast in front of me. Let me look at this so I can give you my year. The short answer is we look for it to be essentially flat. So the 30-year fixed, I don't know what the spot is today. You're probably at 6.6%, I'm guessing. So at the end of this year, we look for it to be 6.4%, and then the end of next year, 6.5%. So essentially flat.
I want to ask you a hard question. What's Wells Fargo's 6-month CD rate down? Is it going to go up or down?
I do not know that question. Can I throw a lifeline to Mr. John Williams?
Sure. So CDs right now, Wells Fargo and other banks, we're roughly around the 4.20, 4.25 yield range. That's on the institutional side. They don't know about the retail individual side. But for clients like AVEK, that's where we would be at. And it would follow short-term interest rates. So if you see on the left-hand side of this chart, it would be closer to call it that 3-month, and then we predict it to go down. So most of our clients were suggesting to extend duration. So the longer you invest at the higher rate of return, that's going to generate more interest income over a longer period of time.
So what are you recommending AVEK do? And Teresa, listen.
I think the board in general has a relatively short time horizon, probably 2 years and less. State code allows you to go 5 years. I would recommend pushing out a little longer. Of course, cash flows is most important. So as long as staff has a strong understanding of what your future cash flows are, with maturity already set in the current investment portfolio. Any investment dollars that we could lock up at 4.5, close to 5%, and get corporate notes still in the 5% range, that would obviously be more advantageous at 5% for 5 years. As interest rates come down, you're locked in at that higher rate. So overall, already.
And you've made that recommendation.
Sure, we talk about it often, we do. I'm always an advocate for longer, mostly because of the positive yield curve. We've been in an inverse yield curve environment, which has been a struggle. But right now we go back and look at long-term interest rates, 4.5. Those are great yields going back 30 plus years. So whenever we can lock up for a longer period of time, that's gonna, of course, be more interest income for the district.
Great. Thank you very much.
On the appendix, there's a bar chart, and could you comment on that? There's distribution of household income and spending.
Yes, thank you. So yes, I included this in the appendix because I often get the question, especially from businesses in the retail side, how do you square the disconnect between consumer sentiment and the strength that we've seen in consumer spending? And my answer to that is kind of baked into this slide. So this chart on the left is walking you through consumer sentiment and small business sentiment. You can see that they're both pretty much depressed relative to where they were before the pandemic. We've seen a slight rebound over the past year, but as we can see relative to before 2020, we're running 30-40% below those levels. And so how do I square very depressed consumer sentiment with the strength in spending? Well, in the United States, what we've seen is a dispersion in who's actually spending. So the red line that I showed you way back in the chart that was showing overall real personal consumption, that's aggregate spending. That's not taking the average consumer, that's not the median household, that's just all spending kind of locked up together. What we've seen is that the top 20% of households in the United States in terms of income, they account for close to 50% of total spending today. So you have essentially what we call a little group of big spenders. And that is how I square the disconnect between sentiment and overall spending. A lot of consumers who are in that bottom half, the income distribution, they are the consumers who are pulling back, feeling the inflation pinch, and their share of total spending has been falling here over these past few years.
Yeah, thank you. Is there any other questions from the board and staff? You did a good job, and can you come back a couple times a year?
Virtually.
Okay. You agree to that?
She said,
I guess I'm maybe once a year. Virtually, yes, I can agree to that.
Did you work with Teresa? Who works with Teresa? Okay, great. She says kind things about you.
Long-term relationship. What a price for.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Okay, we'll move on to 8A2, consideration of possible action, resolution announcing the vacancy of the office of Division 3 and stating the board's intent to fill the vacancy. And we'll look, it's Attorney Markman. Is he on the line?
Yes.
Drive safe. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, it's turned over to you.
Okay, I can do this, George. I'm unmuted now. Simply stated, we have a resignation from this office from Frank, Division 3. We come to the date, so it's time to start the process of notifying the people who have to be notified that there's a vacancy so they can start going through an application process. And basically, what Holly has created here is a resolution that gives all the information in the various notices that are in the elections code to be adopted by the board here, and then she'll start her process of making the notifications. And you see the form of the notice is attached to the resolution.
Okay, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, so.
Yep.
Did it? And
Yes.
resolution R 25-13, announcing the vacancy for the office of Director, Division 3, setting the board's intent to fill the vacancy. As adopted as presented. So motion would be in order if there's no further questions.
Mr. President, can the, full resolution be read by the secretary?
Yeah, we can,
It's not that long. I just like for the public to hear what the resolution says.
Resolution R 25.
this is not the present resolution. This is just basically legal language.
Well, it has dates and stuff.
Okay.
That's what.
I think this is a notice you want read, Audrey, rather than the resolution. I think George is right.
I'm sorry, Mr. Markman, I didn't understand you.
The notice that is being adopted by the resolution, it would be something I think you would read to the public that would give them the information without all that legalese is in the resolution.
Okay, I'm just concerned with the
Okay,
date.
Madam Secretary, can we read the resolution, please?
The resolution or the notice of vacancy? Mr. Markman.
I think the notice has the dates Audrey's referring to.
I don't think, you still want it read?
This is it.
Director Miller, you want it read?
I would like the resolution read because it deals with all the.
Okay,
dates
Madam
and-
Secretary, if we could please read it.
Okay. A resolution of the Board of Directors of the Antelope Valley East Kern Water Agency announcing the vacancy for the office of Director for Division Number 3 and stating the board's intent to fill the vacancy. Whereas Antelope Valley East Kern Water Agency is a governmental agency of the state of California formed by a special act of the state legislature for the provision of specifically authorized service in AVEK's boundaries. And whereas the incumbent of the office of Director, Division Number 3, Antelope Valley East Kern Water Agency resigned said office effective March 26, 2025. And whereas pursuant to California Government Code Section 1780, the remaining agency board members shall either make an appointment or call for a special election to fill the vacancy. And whereas the person who assumes that office of Director, Division 3 is expected to fill the position until a special election consolidated with the general election on November 3rd, 2026. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Antelope Valley East Kern Water Agency hereby states that it presently intends to fill the vacancy created in the office of Director, Division Number 3 by appointing a qualified resident and registered voter of Division Number 3, and that the board intends to make a final decision for this purpose no later than May 24th, 2025. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution is sent to the Board of Supervisors of Los Angeles County and the Register Recorder of Voters, adopted this 25th day of March, 2025.
Okay, thank you. The other one, I think we're going to get into the other resolution with the dates a little later on the agenda. Does that? Okay, so,
This is
okay.
fine. And I'll move on it.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Miller.
And Mr. President, I will second that motion.
My second by Director Parrish. There's no further questions or comments. Madam Secretary, if we get a roll call.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam, George Lane.
Yes, motion carried. Yeah, thank you much. Okay, we'll get the next item number B, Customer Relations, Public Information Committee. In Gary Van Dam and the chairman of that, but we have a presentation, an update on feeding kids through the agriculture, program. And Director Van Dam will be is the chairman of that. But if one thing, if it's acceptable with the 4-H leadership, could each 4-H member come up Not your turn yet there.
Not my turn.
Okay.
Okay.
Could each 4-H member come up and we just appreciate you just give your name and what 4-H club you're a member of. And if you're going to show on the fair also, we'd like to hear and what your project is. So. And again, you're welcome. Love to see this next generation being so active.
My name is Wyatt Rowe. I'm the president of Cordsville 4-H. And this year, the projects I'm showing are steer, lamb, goat, and swine project.
Thank you. Good job.
Hi, my name is Ryan Jensen. I'm in Cordsville 4-H. I'm the treasurer. This year, I'm going to be showing a swine, a goat, and a lamb.
Good job.
My name is Matthew Monaco. I am the attendance officer. I am showing a pig, lamb, and goat.
Great.
My name is Jonathan Monaco, and I'm a part of Cordsville 4-H. I'm the sergeant of arms, and I am showing swine and lamb.
Good job.
My name is Joshua Jensen, and I am showing a pig, lamb, and goat.
Great. Thank you much. When I was your age, I was in 4-H, and my grandson's in 4-H. He's in the Cordsville 4-H. So you can all be commended, and thank you much. And just go ahead and return to your seats, and we're gonna continue.
I have dibs
Now
on
it's
it.
your
Dibs on
turn.
the pigs. Good evening. My name is Debbie Dino. I am the president of Kids Feeding Kids Through Agriculture. And also Michelle Royal is also here. She's our vice president. Angie Hughes is our secretary, and our at-large are Brian Garindo and Scott Clark. And together, I think we're a dynamic duo. We all bring something different to the table. I want to start out with, we do not take a stipend for anything that we do. This is completely volunteer. And when I get finished with this, you can see how much this project has grown. Starting out in 2018, I became a member of the Antelope Valley Fair Board Association. I knew nothing about livestock. I attended the livestock auction, and I was highly impressed by these young kids that are pictured above, of how well they raised an animal, how nice they were, how just great kids. And I thought, these are the cream of the crop here in this valley, and I need to get involved with this. I asked more about the livestock program, and I was schooled about the buyback program. And when I heard that the buybacks for the program go to an outside wholesaler and that meat is taken away out of this valley, that did not sit well with me. My background is I have been the director of public affairs for my church for almost 15 years. I have worked with many food agencies, food banks. I see the need in this valley, especially the northern part of the Antelope Valley, for food, for fresh farm to table meat. And even not farm to table meat, they do not get any protein at all. And these are for our families that live in this valley, for our seniors and our veterans. I, at that point, was talking with a gentleman by the name of John Rocky. And together in 2018, we decided we're going to take the leap and start Kids Feeding Kids. That first year, I was scared to death. I didn't know what the heck was happening. We received 23 hogs that first year, and I was elated. 2019, we received just a few more hogs. And at that time, the CEO, Dan Jacobs, had said to me, Debbie, we're going to take your project and we're going to submit it for the Western Fairs Association Merrill Award. I answered saying, what's the Merrill Award? I have no idea. Come to find out, the Merrill Award is the highest award and is very coveted by the Western Fairs Associations, and many fairs throughout the United States vie for it. I went to their conference, I spoke at their conference, and I spoke from my heart. Heavy competition. One being the Orange County Fair, the other being the LA County Fair, and the big Fresno State Fair, and us little Antelope Valley Fair. Needless to say, we won the award. At that point, I knew in my heart we were on to something. And our numbers have continued to grow. Not in 2023, but in 2022, we were up to 50 hogs. And I thought, that is so great. 2023, I think we ended up with about just short of 60 hogs for the buyback program. 2024, we had our socks blown off. We received 93 hogs on the buyback program. Basically, when it comes down to it, 18,200 pounds of meat, 9,100 pounds to Saves, 9,100 pounds to Grace Resources. We have since incorporated ourselves. We are now Kids Feeding Kids through agriculture. And I'm very grateful to the fair for giving me the opportunity to get me started, to get the rest of us started. And we felt we could go on our own, and we've done pretty successful at it. As you know, most of you that are on that board have raised animals. You know the costs involved. We are strictly a asking for contribution organization. Without that, we couldn't do it. I have given you 2 letters from both Saves and Grace showing the importance of what we do. We are probably one of the only suppliers that give them fresh farm to table meat. And even better than that, these are raised by our kids here in the Valley. We want to keep livestock and agriculture here. And even though I am a San Fernando Valley born and raised girl, I am now truly an Antelope Valley girl because I've been here 30 years. So I feel like I can be accepted now. We have done some great things. I have to give kudos to Michelle Royal. She has worked with the Antelope Valley Union High School District and has worked really hard in us getting animals back into the schools. And I'm happy to say that last year, Palmdale High School, for the first time in 15 years, raised 3 hogs. They are up and running. They are raising, I believe, 10 hogs this year. Plus 2 for us. Absolutely, we have to be involved in it. What a great thing that these inner city kids now have the opportunity to be involved in this. And in fact, last year, one of the young men, a nice young man, was so excited about it, he changed his decision. He was going to be, I believe it was going into pharmaceutical. He is now up at, is it Fresno's? And he is going into animal husbandry. He had never even raised a dog. So that just answers questions. That just makes us happy, everything else. We have also just signed an MOU with the Antelope Valley Union High School and with the Boys and Girls Club and the Antelope Valley High School. The Boys and Girls Club is directly across the street from Antelope Valley High School. It's a win-win. These are inner city kids. We have talked to these kids. These kids, when you ask them the question, where does meat come from? They say the market. Well, you're right on that point, but there's a lot more to it than getting to that market. We are working with these kids. They are going to go this year. We got in a little bit late, which is fine. They're just going to go over and start observing and helping and feeding and cleaning and getting themselves involved. Next year, we would like them to raise a hog. And my only criteria for that hog is they can take it to fair. Dan Jacobs has been gracious with giving them a special category that they can sell their animal at. And I just want the meat back. That's all I want. It's been a great program. We are continuing to grow. I would invite all of you to please come to the auction. It is April 30th. April 30th. If you haven't been to an auction in a long time, please come. If you've never come, please come. You are seeing the cream of the crop kids in this valley. These are our future leaders, as most of you that are on this board did 4-H or did some kind of raising of animals. And look where you're at today. I thank you very much for the consideration. If you have any questions, and I'd also like to introduce Erica Rowe. She is the president of Ports Hill 4-H, just to say a few words about that.
That'd be great, great job, and thank you for your dedication.
Thank you.
Do any of the board members have any comments?
I do.
Yep.
You have something?
Go ahead first.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank the kids for coming out, taking their time out of their busy day. Coming and talking to the AVEK board, maybe you can get some directors out to buy your animals. Debbie, can you go into real quick what the cost is today to buy an animal for the fair, for a ticket show?
Erica is much better at that than I am. I'm still got that little bit of city in me.
Let's go into what it costs.
Okay, I just want to clarify real quick. I am not the president of Ports Hill 4-H. I am married to the club leader, and my son Wyatt is the president of Ports Hill 4-H, and I'll have him come tell you about all the costs of raising animals. I'm just a byproduct of these awesome kids, but it has nothing to do with Wyatt.
Hello, I'm Wyatt Rowe. So the cost that go into raising an animal is obviously very dependent on the species, but for your average hog, you're looking to buy the animal for between $300 and $600, and then you'll be in another $1,000 between feed and supplements and resources and other things that you need to show the animal through the fair.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one more.
Sure.
Debbie, how do we expand to all high schoolers?
That's a great question.
Michelle, can you?
And a Michelle question.
And Erica, actually, Michelle and Erica, because Erica just got hired as the director of community liaison for the Antelope Valley Union High School District. And so it's literally my job to help grow FFA programs in the Antelope Valley. So working together has been great.
So there's actually a couple of different programs going on right now. There's another program called AVYAA, which is doing the loan portion. So some of the kids who come through the Kids Feeding Kids program need loans. And so we've set up loan programs for them, just like USDA, but they don't have to do all the paperwork. And we've kept it, we're teaching them business, we're teaching them responsibility. And we work with the Union High School District, and it's awesome.
And I'm a sucker. With Kids Feeding Kids, we saw that the need, we were trying to grow the Ports Hill 4-H program in our community. And what we kept finding was families who said, we can't raise an animal in our yard, we live in a truck home. And so we started a nonprofit as well in our family called Rough Beginnings. And some of these kids, we have 4 or 5 different families that actually raise their animals in our barn at our home. And so right now, I think, Wyatt, correct me if I'm wrong, we have 11 hogs, 9 lambs, 4 goats, and a steer in our backyard. And so it's just one other way that we can help support our community. We don't take any payment from the children, the kids, students, children, they're young people, or their families. It's all voluntary. And so we just take donations from the community as well to help these kids raise animals, because we think the leadership skills, the communication skills, and just the responsibility of growing your own little business, reaching out to community members, being able to talk to adults. Really, that's why I really wanted them up here and not really us, because they're the ones that we're building their futures. It's not anything about us. So anyway.
Yeah, thank you.
You're just looking great.
One more quick thing about Kids Feeding Kids. Deb started it. I am so grateful that she did. But there have been other farmers in this area, you being one of them, you don't even know it, who have, the LA Cattlemen's Association has jumped in, and when their cattle are aging out, they call us and say, we'll give you this animal, you process it and get it to the different food banks. You donated a couple babies a couple of years ago, and I got them all raised up, bottle fed, and got them all raised up, and then I donated them over to AV High School so those kids could get used to those big steers. And their names are Ben and Jerry. And and we've got 4 little girls who are not much bigger than those steers are, but those little girls are learning to show those steers, and we'll be showing steers next year. So thank you to all the farmers of this area.
Yeah, thank you.
as I say, we all bring something to the table, which is kind of nice. If you have any other questions.
You know, we've had an excellent presentation and we'd love to see the kids here. And I think we can move on and ready for the next motion.
Mr. President, I just want to make one comment, and Debbie, thank you very much for being here, and Eric and Michelle for the great work you're doing. And Debbie, that idea to do this was incredible, and then it's just taken off beyond belief. To our 4-H students and young men here today, it's incredible what you do. And I had the ability to be an FFA in ag science in high school, and I say it everywhere I go, I would not be in the seat today if I hadn't gone through that program. And my ag teacher, I will remember him always, Leo Thibault, and he made and Harvey Kennedy, and they made an incredible impression on my life. And it's the best program there is, and I will do anything possible to grow that program. So Debbie, thanks. You're doing great. All of you are doing great, and we'll support you any way we can. What do you do with the money that we donate?
Thank you. We're going to turn this over to our chairman of the Public Relations Committee, Dr. Van Dam.
Can I just make one more comment before you do that? For a future, I would love to see AVEK become a sponsor at the livestock auction. You gentlemen and women have been engaged in this community. You all have been farmers, raised animals. We've got to keep this going. But to do that, we have got to get kids from other areas to get involved. And with that takes money. I would love to have that conversation down the line of AVEK being involved strictly with the agriculture, strictly with the livestock auction. And on that note, I will be quiet. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you much. Dr. Van Dam.
Thank you, Debbie. So I move on the board order AB 2.
Mr. President, I will second Gary's motion.
8B2.
8B2.
Oh, Mr. President, this is Drew. Just want to add, I'm a 4-H alum as well, and have seen the hard work that Debbie, Angie, Michelle, and Eric have been putting in. And I'm sorry to miss the students that are here. Thank you, Holly, for sending me some pictures. It's great work that you're doing to the young people, and we're excited to have you as our guest tonight.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Motion by Director Van Dam, a second by Director Paris. There's no further questions or comments.
Just one. How much are we donating?
10,000.
Okay.
Madam Secretary.
We doubled it from last year, Deb.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam, George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. And something else before I should think about, if you would ever like to have a tour of the AVEK facilities, it's pretty interesting where the water comes from, how it's treated, how it's distributed. So keep that in mind. And there's a large plant, that adjoins the administration, building. But if you would like to do that and get a group together, you're going to be welcome. We can coordinate that with the staff. Okay, thank you much.
Thank you. And God bless the American farmer.
Would it be appropriate at this time if I could ask the students, the 4-Hers, to take a picture with the board?
We would love that.
Thank you so much.
George.
Hey, Gary. How are you?
Good job. Good job. Good luck in the bear.
Thank you so much. Oh, sure will.
Okay, we're move on to 8B3. And again, Victor Van Dam is chairman of this committee. It's running donation contribution to the Antelope Valley boosters, serving our first responders. Well, Matt, did you want to take this or Gary?
We reviewed it a little bit. Why don't you take it over?
Okay, thank you, Director Van Dam. Good evening. This item was recommended by Director Mercy and was presented and reviewed by the Public Information Committee. So a little background and then Director Mercy can jump in here. But the Antelope Valley boosters help raise money to provide valuable life-saving equipment and financial support to the Lancaster and Palmdale Sheriff's Station. And the Antelope Valley boosters is formerly known as the Sheriff Boosters in the Antelope Valley. So to support their fundraising efforts, they host an annual casino night at the Antelope Valley Fair. And they are seeking some sponsorship packages from AVEK. And you can see the different packages listed there on the screen. So the committee talked about it, didn't have a firm recommendation on the dollar amount or sponsorship level, but wanted to have that discussion with the full board. So Director Mercy, did you want to jump in here and add anything to that?
Sure. Yeah, just want to let everyone know as part of the rebrand there, the group is assisting and providing support for all law enforcement and first responders throughout the Antelope Valley. Some of the things we do is that are listed here. Additionally, we also the organization provides scholarships to young people in the Explorer type programs. And so we can, I know there was a question about designating it to a specific purpose. We can do that, if we want to put it towards equipment or towards the Fallen Hero Fund or those scholarships. I would ask, or I'd make a motion to do a $2,500 sponsorship with that in mind.
Okay, do we have any further comments or discussion?
Need a second.
I just have a question. Drew, is that no, it's not a second.
Yeah.
I have a question. Is that the chip bucket sponsor for the casino night, or is that sponsorship for a scholarship, or what is that?
Yeah, I would put it towards the I'd say either the chip bucket or the chair covers, and within that, all of the proceeds go directly to the beneficiaries, whether it's if we wanted to designate it for something, Memorial Fund, the printing and supplies for those things are all donated.
So the 2,500 would go to the association?
Yeah, to the AV boosters.
So we're not paying.
What I'm trying to say is we don't have any overhead, that none of it gets peeled off to to pay for the event itself. It's all donated.
I have a question.
Say that again?
The branding will
I
go
think
on.
I know.
So your logo will go on the bucket
Mi-
or the chair.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, there's no second yet. I'd like to make a comment. I think I see what Audrey's concern is. I don't think we want AVEK's logo on the chip buckets for some reason. But if I would second your motion, Drew, but I'd like it to be for $5,000, if you could change it to that. And I'd like you consider to add that we would specify that we would want it to go towards the Explorer Scholarship Fund. And we.
Okay. I'd take that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, I won't even amend it. If you make that motion, I'll second that.
Okay, yeah, I'll make that motion. $5,000.
Yeah, so your motion is that we should do a $5,000 donation, and it looks like that would be a stage sponsor, which would be a banner or something that AVEK is supporting it. And we would like, and I know this whole event raises funds for everything, but we'd like specifically to direct that towards the Explorer scholarships that you do, Michelle. You think that's okay? Okay. And I'll second that motion, Drew.
Did we get, hold on, did we get an Explorer? Explain that, Michelle. Can you explain what's that Explorer?
And Michelle, could you come up to the podium? Because Director
Thank you. Just
on the phone, yeah. Folks on the phone can't hear.
For me, yeah, Michelle's also a director for the booster, so it might be easier for her to explain since I'm not able to be there in person.
So the Antelope Valley Boosters does a scholarship program every year for the Explorers. So all of the young men and women who come through the Explorer program, there's always extra education and things that they need. Their uniforms alone are very expensive. So we will give those scholarships out as depending on how many young men and women we have every year, we give those scholarships out accordingly. So that we could direct that $5,000. You don't have to have branding on anything if you don't want it. But if you would like a banner, we would more than happily hang one for you.
Be nice. We had a banner, nice that we know the money's going to a scholarship fund.
Money's going to go to the kids.
Yeah. And the Explorer program for all of you, and I was a sheriff reserve for 20 years. The Explorers do incredible work. It's a program where they start with they get incredible training to kind of a pre-apprenticeship to become a sheriff or law enforcement. You get great kids in there. I think this is money well spent for our community. This Boosters Club is just incredible. They raise, I would say, millions of dollars now to support our law enforcement. And we have better equipment for the sheriffs in our area than almost anywhere else because of them. So I think it's an incredible program that we should support, and that if we direct it towards the scholarship program, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, we have a motion in a second. We would ask you.
This is Director Donato. I'd like to make a comment, and I want our legal Jim to give us an opinion. You have a board order here. It says 8B3, consider impossible action to support a donation to the Antelope Valley Boosters. It has nothing to do with the Explorers. If you want it to be Explorers and the money needs to go there, then this needs to be brought back to the board and provide a board order for that item. Right now, it looks like you guys are going to be supporting a casino night, playing cards, calling it a donation. That's just my opinion. Is it going to the booth? See, the thing is, if it goes to the Explorer Scouts, that's one thing, but that needs to be a board order, and it cannot be this Antelope Valley Booster, and you can't just tear this thing apart, the AV Boosters, and call it a different division. So Jim, can you respond to that?
Well, I think the point of what the agenda needs to do is to inform the public that the board can take an action, and it's not specified how much the board would contribute. It just talked, this obviously is a contribution, and the Boosters Casino Night is part of the packages that can be donated to the boosters. So Frank, I would say all in all, I don't think a person would be surprised at the way the motion went. I think there's sufficient notice.
Okay.
Jim, this is Director Miller.
Yeah.
There's nothing against a public agency to, because it looks like it's sponsoring a casino night, and that's my concern. I'd rather see it a donation directly to the Explorers. Is there anything wrong with having our banner up at casino night?
No, not really. I mean, it's actually commonplace now, Audrey, to see those kinds of things. It used to be, it reminds me of, I have one city that has a baseball team, and for about 3 years, they didn't want to sell beer in the stadium, but eventually they treated it like a baseball game, and they also allow advertising on the scoreboard, things of that nature. So these are really pretty run-of-the-mill things now and public donations.
Okay.
But it's up to the board. It's up to your taste whether you would be bothered by by the banner.
Mr. President, just to clarify, and I think Michelle, why don't you come back up here to clarify what this is? I've been to casino night. It's not money exchanging hands. It's a way to generate funds for an organization that has done incredible work in the Antelope Valley with a board that works very hard to raise a lot of funds for our law enforcement and now first responders.
Yeah.
So I think there seems to be a misconception that there's going to be money exchanging hands and things like that. Could you kind of explain how fun it is and maybe invite the board to come?
The board should absolutely come. So we have 2 fundraisers a year, a golf tournament and a casino night. There is no money exchanging hands. It's just, we do our work based on sponsorships. We actually give the tickets away. So we would love to have you all come because it is a good night. And we will have the explorers there that night working the event with us. So it's just a great time. We have it at the fairgrounds because we had to have a really big building because we have a lot of turnout and it's a really good community event.
And I believe you have lots of public agencies that support the city of Lancaster.
We do.
Yes. So it's not, this is new.
Palmdale.
Palmdale Water District is a sponsor as well. So other water agencies are able to participate.
So I just wanted to kind of, when you look at that, you get a misconception, but once you're there, you realize.
We have no showgirls. There will be no showgirls there.
Yeah, we won't sponsor them either.
No, we have the.
Is there a price for the tickets?
Say it again, Frank?
How much are the tickets?
I don't even know because we do all.
Tickets aren't sold. They're given away and given in blocks with sponsorships.
Okay, and the other question I have, does when they win at the table, they're given something on the win. Do they get any prizes or anything with those from the winnings?
There's
somebody like
no money, no. There's raffle tickets and donated prizes.
Okay, but you have to put those on your 420. See, the thing is, the law states that a director.
No, you're wrong about that, Frank. If everyone has an equal chance to win, it is not a reportable gift under the 700. So we run that by legal.
Who said that?
The booster attorneys, and it's like that for golf tournaments and everything else. I've been working in this field for a long time, and those are not considered gifts.
I differ with you because it's over. I've been challenged
I've talked to the
before.
FPPC directly on this because I faced the issue,
more you have to
and
put
it is not a gift reportable on 700s or anything like that.
Gentlemen, you also do not have to participate in the games if you don't want to. That evening, we are there to raise money for our first responders and sheriffs. Cool.
Comment. We're a custodian of the public funds, and basically, it's not going directly to the sheriff, first responder, but basically one taxpaying agency contributing to another taxpaying agency.
No, because the boosters are a nonprofit. The money doesn't go to the sheriff's department.
I'm not asking. I'm talking right now. Thank you. And in $5,000 is a considerable amount. I could probably do 100. But giving to the kids the 4-H, that's one thing. Doing this is another. These are adults, and everybody likes to receive something. I was in the Sheriff's Reserve for 20 years, and I paid for most everything myself. And I know it's probably it's going for a good cause, but should the public be paying for that?
I didn't present it, I'm just asking questions. Tonight I didn't have to be on the.
Let me respond. I was in the sheriff reserves for 20 years also. And that's why I specified that it would go towards the scholarships, just like, you know, we've done in the past. And the explorers do incredible work for free, like the sheriff reserves do, like you did, and like I did. We're making this controversial. It doesn't need to be. It's a great program that goes directly to our community. All of us benefit from the law enforcement in our community. All of us benefit from what the explorers do for us in this community for free. We're making it controversial. It doesn't need to be. It's an incredible program that's been going on for years. Many public agencies contribute to it. And I think, you know, $5,000, the way we have presented this motion, our legal counsel is telling us it's fine. There's not a problem with it. So we're making something controversial. We don't need to be. I think, you know, 5,000 is.
Supported. I'd rather see 2,500.
Yeah,
I think we need to look at these very close next year. We're giving a lot of different. I don't want this to be a precedent. We're giving a lot of money away recently.
Well, and for very good causes. And, you know, you and I have a different view on that. We have a different view on some things, and a lot of things most things we agree on, George.
Okay. We have a motion and second. Any further discussion?
Go ahead, Michelle.
I just want to make a comment that I do support the local boosters. I do value them as well. I just wanted to clarify what the funds were going to. The motion addresses that, and I think I will call for the question.
Okay, but nothing further, Madam Secretary?
I had one question.
Yeah.
So are we doing a $5,000?
The motion is 5,000 right now.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
I abstain.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Barry Van Dam,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Oops. Motion carried. Okay. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Good presentation.
Okay, now we're down to item number B4, water quality report. So Matt, you want to lead that off? Or?
Yeah.
Mr. President, this is Drew. I just wanted to let the board know, as you know, I'm on a work trip and I have to go to a work dinner now, so I'll be leaving the meeting, but I appreciate all the discussion and best wishes for the rest of the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right. Have a good night. So next item, 8B4, Jordan Ray, our lab manager, is here to present the 2024 annual water quality report, which we have to get filed and distributed to our customers by the end of March. So take it away, Jordan.
This isn't going to be controversial, is it?
I hope not.
Okay, good.
Give us good news.
Good evening, directors. So I'm going to start off with some background on the regulation. The Safe Drinking Water Act amendments of 1996 require the agency as a wholesaler to produce and distribute an annual water quality report to its retail customers. So the report covers data from January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2024, and it must be completed by April 1st. Our retail customers then use this data to complete their consumer confidence reports, and these are also referred to as CCRs. A CCR provides transparency to customers about the source of their drinking water, the levels of any contaminants detected, and whether those levels meet state and federal standards. So the specific water quality constituents and the frequency of sampling for each water source are determined by the vulnerability assessment and monitoring frequency guidelines. And these are developed by the State Water Resources Control Board. Once completed, copies of the report are distributed to the agency's customers. We do this by hard copy or email. It's also made available on our website for easy access by the public. And then the report is uploaded to the State Water Resources Control Board's drink portal, along with an eCCR certification form stating that all good faith efforts were taken to distribute the information.
And then, so let's dive into the water quality results. AVEK successfully conducted all required monitoring of our raw and treated water supplies. We had no coliform treatment technique triggers or E. coli maximum contaminant level violations in our weekly back-to-use samples from the distribution system. 100% of our monthly samples met EPA turbidity performance standards. And we also satisfied the EPA groundwater rule, which this requires a minimum chlorine residual of 0.3 milligrams per liter leaving the clear well. All of our primary and secondary standards were below the established MCLs, and all organic compounds were non-detect for the locations sampled in 2024. So here's a summary of our disinfection residual precursors and byproducts. So throughout the distribution system, chlorine has an MCL of 4.0 milligrams per liter. Our highest detected, this is for Kern County, sorry. In Kern County, our highest detected residual was 1.35, so we met that standard. The Roseman Water Treatment Plant was off of 2024, so we didn't have to sample for the TOC treatment requirement. And then THMs, they have a MCL of 80 parts per billion, and then the highest detected sample tested 24 parts per billion. And then HAAs, their MCL is 60 parts per billion, and the locations ranged from 2.8 to 4.0. So for LA County, still has the 4.0 maximum contaminant level chlorine residual, and the highest detection we had was 2.19. And then TOC has a treatment requirement. It's a percent removal based on source water levels. And we met that treatment requirement. Levels averaged 2.1 in the treated water and 3.2 in the State Water Project raw water. And then for LA County, the ranges for our THM results were 15 to 63. And then for the HAAs, we had none detected 24. And then this is a little closer look at our THMs. So this is the summary of the past 5 years of the locational running annual averages. This gives you a good look. You can see how it fluctuates at each location, but it remains below AVEK's internal goal of 64 parts per billion. And so we ended 2024 with the highest THM running annual average at any location, 19 parts per billion in Kern County and 49 parts per billion in Los Angeles County. And that's all I have for tonight. Happy to answer any questions.
On your letter, in the last paragraph, and then different, following that, did your general manager, that last paragraph, could you try to clarify that? Page 19.
In the water quality report, the actual report?
Page 19 of the agenda, maybe you don't have it. It was the dear general manager.
Yes, so since we're a wholesaler, we don't have to create a consumer confidence report that other retail customers do. We prepare our summary of our annual results and then send it to them.
Is this your general manager?
This is to all our, no, sorry, these are to our retail customers.
Okay.
So just to clarify, this letter was sent to all the general managers for the retail agencies, such as LA County Waterworks, Quartzville, etc.
If you're not familiar with it, it's difficult to follow that last paragraph.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the ones that got it can follow it.
Yeah. Okay. So it said, was that one specific person or different people?
They change. I do get updated contact information from our retail agencies, but.
Okay. Do you have anything further? Or is that okay? Is there any questions from the board?
Good presentation, Jordan. Wasn't controversial.
Okay, thank you much.
And we need a motion to approve board order 8B4, is that right?
We have a motion by Dr. Paris,
Yes, I'll make that motion to approve board order 8B4.
second by Dr. Van Dam. There's no further questions or comments. Madam Secretary?
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy. Oh, he's not here anymore. Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, the motion carried. Thank you. Excuse me.
George.
Okay. Okay. We move on to the Finance Committee. Director Donato?
I move
Okay.
last comment, but
Okay. Excuse me. Yeah, we're in the Finance Committee, Director Donato?
Yes. Okay, brings us to 8C1, consideration and possible action to accept and file the check register list for the period of February 27th through March 12th, 25, and our general manager Newsom will give us an overview.
All right, thank you, Director Donato. So begin on page 31 of your packet is the checklist for this period. I'll hit the highlights. This was reviewed in detail with the Finance Committee last Thursday. So item number 1 is our monthly fixed payment to Department of Water Resources for just over $1.66 million. That goes towards our statement of charges. On the second page, item 41 is our annual membership dues for the State Water Contractors Association, $336,000. That was approved by the board as part of our budget. Item 47 is a progress payment to Cal Sierra Construction for the Leona Valley Tank Rehab Project. That's about $168,000. And we hope to start filling that tank with water next week sometime. The contractor is making progress and wrapping up the interior rehab and coating on that tank. So that'll be good. Item 51 was approved by the board just recently. It's a a payment for the moss screen rebuild at the Eastside Water Treatment Plant. Couple pages back, we have on page 35, we have some progress payments that are tied to the High Desert Water Bank Capital Program. We have progress payment to Bakersfield Well and Pump for the drilling package. This is about $189,000. And then also attached to the check run is the written monthly report for the High Desert Water Bank prepared by Kennedy Jenks. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I move on board order 8C1.
Second, this is Keith.
Okay, we have a,
Can I ask a question?
definitely. John.
What's AVEK's contribution to the state water contractors?
So the one I mentioned in here, John, is the statewide state water contractors, not the local state water contractors. So this is a statewide.
Okay. Can I ask you what are the contributions of AVEK for the 3 state water contractors that are in the Antelope Valley?
Yeah, so in our bylaws that we have between the 3 agencies, we split the cost evenly for the operation. And right now it's about, I want to say about $12,000 each, roughly, Peter. So
that's it even. So Palmdale Water District spends $12,000, Little Rock Place, $12,000, AVEK.
Yeah.
And that's the total sum?
That's for the first like 30 some odd $1,000. And then if we do a specific project together, then it's prorated based on our table A amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt.
Yep.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
Okay, we had
Should I go on to 8C2?
Madam Secretary, there's no further questions?
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, got to get that motion carried.
Good job.
Okay, that brings us on to 8C2, consider possible action to accept and file the check registry report for the month ending February 28, 25. And our finance and administrator manager, Teresa Yates, will give us an overview.
Thank you, Director Donato.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, directors. This is the treasurer's report for February. And the average yield to maturity for the total portfolio for February was 4.47%, which was down 0.037% from January. Average days to maturity for the total portfolio was 248 days, or approximately 8 months. And total cash and investments at February 28th was 158 million, which was up 493,000 from January 31st. As you know, we did set up that California class account, and that transfer occurred at the very beginning of March. So on the March statement, you will see that California class added to this report, and the current yield for class is 4.38%. So, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, how long was that for?
How long was what for?
That,
The class? So it's like LAIF, as long as the board chooses to keep the funds in that account.
Oh.
Yeah. It's not a term product.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe 4.3?
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, it's a good report and everything looks in order, so
Thank you.
appreciate the hard work.
Thanks, Rich.
Okay, I'll move on 8C2 that we approve the treasurer's report.
Second, Keith.
Motion by Director Donato, second by Director Dias, Nate, C2. If there's no further questions or comments, Madam Secretary, if you have a roll call.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam, George Lane.
Yes, yeah, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, yeah, thank you, good report. Everything looks good. And next, item D, the Water Master Committee, Rob, or
Yes.
send it over to you.
Thank you, George. And we're going to have a presentation on our agenda for tomorrow's meeting, and I'll have Matt lead the presentation. Just make it exciting, Matt, please.
Okay,
Not
I'll do my
controversial
best.
at all.
All right. Thank you, Director Paris. So on page 67 of your agenda packet is the agenda for tomorrow's Water Master Board meeting. So I wanted to hit the highlights of the items that may affect AVEK. And, you know, going forward, I think it's important that we always look at the items on the agenda with this group or with this board and look at it as how does it affect AVEK. So I'm going to try to start doing that this evening. So the first item on the agenda tomorrow for the Water Master is consideration and possible action to approve First Amendment to the MOU with AVEK to serve as the administrator for a fixed term. We talked about this item a couple different times now, and we did approve the language in the previous version of this amended MOU or First Amendment to the MOU. But the Water Master Board and various parties had comments on that version, and you can see the three highlights there on the screen. They had still have concerns about conflict of interest, potential conflicts of interest regarding AVEK serving as the administrator, and particularly when it comes to matters directly involving AVEK. Second issue was on the billing and cost recovery. They proposed some edits to that language to make sure it was clear that AVEK is charging all costs associated with providing the admin services. Not only just employee staff time, but related overhead. And then the third item had to do with voting on termination. It had some language in the amended MOU, allows for termination of AVEK serving as the administrator for cause. And some recent comments and suggestions were to add a 4-1 requirement where AVEK would not be part of the vote to terminate. So it would only take 4 members to terminate, not including AVEK. So my recommendation is that for this board is that we wait until the water master agrees on proposed language in the MOU. We don't get ahead of ourselves and agree to this language tonight. We kind of wait and see how it goes with the water master, because I think there's still some work to be done amongst the water master board members to get this finalized. So I don't want to jump the gun and approve something tonight that may or may not come true tomorrow. So any comments or questions on any of those items or the recommendation?
I have one comment on the conflict of interest to what exactly is the conflict of interest? Because I believe Hallmark Group was a conflict of interest, and that they're going to represent adjudication for Kiama Valley with the carrot growers.
Yeah, I can't comment on the Hallmark Group, but your first question about going into specifics, there haven't been specific instances that they've pointed out where there could be a conflict or has been a conflict. You know, we've been serving in this role for quite some time now, and nobody's been able to put their finger on a direct example of a conflict of interest. So a lot of it, I think, is perceived conflict of interest, being that AVEK sits on the board, AVEK is serving as the administrator, and then the AVEK staff is involved in all aspects of that. So
Listen to the advisory board comments. It seems to fly through with flying colors. Maybe Julie wants to comment a little bit on that. And go ahead, Julie.
And just to clarify, I have a note at the top of the screen there. So at the advisory committee, this amended MOU was approved 9 yeses. There were 2 noes and 1 abstention.
Julie, you want to comment on that?
Sure. Actually, Matt, that was the vote from the previous month.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, this time we had 9 yes,
and
no no's, and 2 abstain.
Oh, okay.
We had Stan Powell and Dan Clifford.
Okay.
They abstained. You know, we continue to have to talk about this conflict of interest, and we don't get an example. It's just they throw that out there. We have 2 attorneys that sit on the advisory board, and so that's brought up every single time for this last year. Now, we had AVEK, we had you guys take care of us for 7 years, and we didn't talk about this. Then we bring in Hallmark, and now we have to start talking about conflict of interest. So it's just a new animal, but there's never an example. On the billing and cost recovery, there was no big discussion, you know, on that. You know, we're going to pay what you bill us, and that's only fair. On the voting and termination, Galen and I are against that. We think AVEK ought to have a vote. Now, I know Matt is good with it, and if you're good with it, then that's fine. I just don't like to see that vote go away.
Can I address Julie, Mr. President?
Yeah.
Thanks. I saw that too, and sitting on the board, obviously they're talking about my vote. I can understand, but something I would then say, if I can't vote on termination, then why don't we accept a 4-1 vote on accepting an administrator? And that might resolve a lot of our problems. So I guess if it's, I don't mind giving up my vote. If it's 4-1 vote for AVEK not to be there, we don't want to be there, right?
Right.
But on the other hand, if it's a 4 4-1 vote that we should be there, then why don't we make it so it can just be a 4-1 vote for us to be there?
On just the administrator
Just the
position?
administrator. Would you support something like that?
Possibly. I'd want to think about that.
No, and that's why
with
I'm
my
throwing
thoughts.
it out, because I'm thinking about it too.
Yeah.
You know, my position for a long time has been, I think to get a 5-0 vote on everything is difficult, and certainly on the administrator, every time we voted on it, it's been very difficult.
Right.
And if 4 of the board members want a certain administrator, then we should get it. And if they don't want me to vote on terminating AVEK, I'm fine with that. I would accept the 4-1 vote in that situation, because, well, like I said, if there's 4 that doesn't want AVEK, I've never seen that, but if it ever came up, then we shouldn't be there.
And I agree with that. It's frustrating for all of us, you know, to hear we're going into a second full year and AVEK has been available, has done the best job for us, been the most cost conscious. It's just beyond me why we continue to have this discussion. And I hate to say it, but a lot of it is one of our landowners that we don't think the same, clearly. That's what you have when you have large corporate farming and you have little guys that are actually paying the bill. If that person was footing the bill, he'd probably have a lot more to say about it in fighting to keep the costs down. Those of us that are paying it, we are going to fight.
Julie, we do appreciate your support. You've been supportive from the very beginning, and thank you. And take that back and think about it, because that may come up tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Matt, what specific is the information we need to follow AVEK's wishes?
For tomorrow, my recommendation is AVEK doesn't do anything tonight. My recommendation is AVEK does not take any action tonight on approving the MOU.
Okay.
We wait and see how it goes.
Seems reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
You comfortable with that?
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. And then moving on, the other item that directly affects AVEK, tomorrow the water master is considering approving the replacement water plan. So as you know, each year the water master assesses replacement water assessments to parties that overpump or pump more than their production rights. The Antelope Valley State Water Contractors develops a plan on how that replacement water is going to be provided to the groundwater basin. The water master engineer then reviews and makes recommendations for that plan or to that plan. And then the Antelope Valley State Water Contractors Association boundaries determine which of the 3 state water contractors provide that replacement water. So it's either AVEK, Palmdale Water District, or Little Rock Creek, depending on where the production occurred or overproduction occurred. So they're going to consider the plan tomorrow, and AVEK's portion of the plan is a credit of about 58 acre feet to the West Side Water Bank, because there was some clerical errors made to a previous plan prepared by the Hallmark Group. So we need to true that up. AVEK staff caught that this year. And there's also a deduct of 339.3 acre feet from AVEK's Upper Amargosa and Little Rock recharge sites. And in exchange for providing that replacement water volume, we would receive a payment of just under $170,000. Yeah. So staff's recommendation to the AVEK board is to direct AVEK's representative to support approval of the plan as presented tomorrow.
As long as there's concurrence, we don't see a need for a motion with this.
Correct. And then the last item that is going to be on the agenda tomorrow is various applications. You can see them on the screen there. Down at the bottom, we recommend that the AVEK board provide direction to the AVEK representative to go ahead and support these various transfers applications because they have no impact on AVEK's operation. And then the other thing, I don't have a slide for it, but the water master engineer is going to give a presentation under their report tomorrow regarding the carryover water balance, and kind of what they're seeing with the numbers, the modeling, and the groundwater contour levels. So if you're available tomorrow, I highly recommend that you tune in for that and hear what they have to say.
That's gonna be at the end of the.
Yeah, it's going to be towards the end of the agenda. Yeah. And that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Some things.
I've got a question.
Okay.
Is there gonna be policy set tomorrow on that, or is there?
No, it's just information. No policy or action item.
Let me make another comment. Before there's any policy stuff on that, I think, we all need to be refilling, because that's gonna be, it's gonna be a lot of money for the landowners if they carry over water and if they adjust their columns.
Yeah, I think that would be fully vetted with the community, Gary, and with the board and through the advisory committee. That's not something that would be voted on without it being fully vetted.
Is that tied in also, Rob, with this storage agreement?
Yeah, I have no idea. I think we're going to learn tomorrow where we're at. I don't think so. We haven't even gotten to the storage agreements yet. I think this is just informational where we're at.
But, and that's also a concern, maybe Matt can just brief it real quick, on those storage agreements, aren't we getting up to that 10-year phase where some of these early carryover rights have to be stored?
Yeah, and Pete can correct me here, but the first year carryover water would have to go into a storage agreement by the end of next year.
Well,
correct. 2026. Yes. By the end of 2026. That would be based on the first year water.
So I think we need to address that also, because we're starting to get up against the timeline that.
Yeah, we've started with, we now know what slot the different carryover water is. We've done that. And we're moving forward with working on what the regulations will say about having storage agreements for carryover water. That won't be a surprise either. I mean, it will be fully vetted.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, is there any further questions on that or comments?
And Gary, when I first got on this board, I could not have had that conversation with you. I didn't even know what all those things meant.
Good luck tomorrow. Yeah. Okay, well, maybe we'll take things a little out of sequence, but then we'll come back to item number E, but if we go with the general manager's report.
Oh, okay, sure. Close your eyes, Frank. You didn't see those pictures, right? So a couple things for the GM report. Peter is going to take this first slide.
All right. Good evening, President Lane, directors. I'll be brief. It's been a long night. So good news you probably got from Matt today. We got a bump of 5% up to 40% allocation. So that means about an extra 7,000 acre feet of water from the State Water Project. So going through this, we come down to a net surplus balance this year after we meet all of our demands and we account for all of our supplies. We have about 22,000 acre feet left over. We have some supply options with that. We can recharge and bank. We currently have a balance of 112,000 acre feet banked locally. We have in the past also done transfers for local groundwater, and we have in the past also transferred for revenue. But currently, given where we're at with the allocation and our surplus and our available banking, Matt and I's recommendation is that we would go ahead and bank this 22,000 acre feet of surplus supply. There's a good chance in April we'll get another bump in the allocation and we can continue that conversation on what to do with the surplus. So I don't know, Matt, if you have anything else you want to add.
No, that was good, Pete. And just to highlight this plan, if it comes true, we would go into 2026 with about 25,000 acre feet in San Luis. So this is after meeting all of our demands and after banking the volume that Peter talked about. The financial impact to bank the 22,000 acre feet would be about $5.5 million because we have to pay the variable cost of moving that water through the state water project. And that would come straight out of reserves to bank that water. So.
And when would we start banking?
We could start any day. So our facilities are ready and our operations staff is ready to go.
And where are we on our carryover in San Luis? Is that?
So we started 2025 with about 26,000 acre feet, but we've been utilizing that over last. Yeah.
So will that be the first water we take out of San Luis for banking too?
That's correct.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we would schedule carryover water from 2024 to be banked this year. And that'd be the first water delivered.
Matt, one comment, doesn't Met pay for that?
Pay for?
Not for our bank.
No, what we're only talking about here is AVEK supplies, not any of our partners. So this water would be banked at the Westside Water Bank. Yeah.
And Met's already banking High Desert, is that right?
No, they currently have not given us the go ahead.
Okay.
So I think from what Peter and I have heard from Met is they're currently in a water selling option. So they're going to try market some of their excess water this year to sell.
Would it make any sense for us to bank in High Desert to bring up our numbers in High Desert if they're not banking there?
No, we have plenty of volume or capacity at the Westside Water Bank, and that's where we have recovery facilities now. We have wells there that we can pull the water out and deliver it directly to our customers. High Desert, it'd be somewhat of a stranded asset for a few years until the wells are completed and power is brought to the site.
Yep, got it. Thanks.
Yep.
Now, don't we find it kind of, with 40%, and that's not what banking water?
Do we find it what?
Well, I just see that that's an opportunity that probably miss out.
Well, that's their water supply management plan or.
Or they're at 30%.
Yeah, they've always told us about 35% is the trigger point for them to have surplus water. But this year, I think they're leaning towards trying to market some water and generate revenue versus banking. All right. Thanks, Pete. And
Matt, more importantly, who's that in our poll? Who was at 40%?
That is you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Sorry, Keith. Keith fell off at 35. So
Bummer.
Next slide is.
John, did you?
Yeah, Matt, have you got your treatment plant already done over there in the High Desert?
No, not yet.
So you couldn't pull water out of there anyway?
No, we're waiting for a decision from Metropolitan on what they want to do with treatment. Okay. And we have to finish constructing the wells and bring power to the site.
Okay.
So we're still a few years out.
Thank you.
Yep. Let's see, this slide I thought was interesting just to show the board what a typical water delivery cycle looks like for AVEK and customer demands. The yellow is what our deliveries by month was in 2024. So you can see it's pretty light and pretty low amount in the winter months. And then spring, it starts to ramp up and then peak summer months are typically July, August, September. So first 2 months of January were January and February were slightly higher than what we were last year for customer deliveries. And then the light blue shows what's estimated based on customer orders. Each year, Tom Barnes works with each of our customers and gets their estimated volumes by month that they anticipate buying from AVEK. So that's what the light blue bars represent. As the year goes on, we'll convert the estimated or projected numbers or quantities to actual, like we did in January and February. So you can see that our peak months, we're delivering roughly 5,000 acre feet a month.
So what's your total list
It's about 40,000 acre feet per year, 40,000. Yeah. Let's see, upcoming events. We have our water master meeting tomorrow. The new committee assignments, which you all have, go into effect on April 1st. It's not an April Fool's joke. And then the association meeting is on April 10th at 6 p.m. There is an aqua conference coming up in mid-May. And due to that aqua conference falling on our first board meeting in May 13th, we may want to think about rescheduling that meeting because I know we have a few directors going and myself is going to that conference as well.
Got to work with the director's schedule.
Yeah.
Make sure it fits in.
Yep. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Okay, is there any other questions of our general manager?
All right. Thank you.
Move on to director's reports.
Mr. President, I have a report on the AVEK Business Expo.
Okay.
Gary was there, Rob was there, Drew, of course, was there. Another successful event. Keynote speaker was the first woman Thunderbird pilot. She told an amazing story, but we also got the economic forecast and the local real estate, commercial and residential forecasts as well. So it's always an informative event for the area, and I truly appreciated attending it this year. It was nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, all I can say is ditto. It was a great conference and learned a lot, and recommend all of you go next year.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, great. Okay, we'll move on to attorney reports. Request for future agenda items.
Nothing to report on from me, George.
Okay. Is there going to be a need to go into closed session?
There is for item A.
Okay, we're going to go back to item number E, special recognition. This is the time in the meeting that we're going to honor a very special director. It's been with us for over 38 years, and it's sad to see his departure, but I'm sure Frank's he's always going to keep busy and do a lot of items and just little change in lifestyles. But we have on page 70, there's a resolution honoring Frank Donato upon his retirement from the board of directors, and we have an accompanying resolution. And afterwards, if anybody would like to talk for a moment or two, everybody's welcome. So a motion would be in order.
I'll make the motion. This is Keith.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I don't think there's any comments right now. Well, there may be, the good ones right there.
Well, Mr. President, when will there be an opportunity for individual directors to speak?
Yes, what was that, Keith?
When would I have an opportunity to say something regarding Frank?
We'll all have an opportunity just a little bit with the resolution. Okay, Madam Secretary, if we can have a roll call.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Dias,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, motion carried, so ordered. And at this time, anybody would like to, we have a resolution. Frank's going to get a copy of that, and I think most of us are probably, what's on the resolution, we'll probably be saying that in our thank you to Frank, but if anybody wants it read, we can do that. Okay, Keith, did you want to take a moment now and turn it over to you?
Yes, thank you. Frank, I've worked with you for almost 35 years, and I've learned a great deal from you about the duties and responsibilities of a good public servant. You have always had a unique way of looking for advantages for AVEK in every new event and opportunity. Thank you and congratulations on your AVEK retirement.
Yeah, thank you.
Keith.
So I had one. Frank, I don't know if you remember this, Gary, and yeah, I don't know if you remember, I met you way before the water board, and that was on a baseball field when your kid got thrown out at home plate. And you ran up, argued with the umpire. You imagine that? Anyway. Out at Palmdale, Frank. We're gonna miss you on the board. Your knowledge in water is outstanding. It will be truly missed. And it's gonna be hard to replace, but as we all get older, we wish you well and great fishing and have fun in your retirement. Thank you for all you've done for the board.
And Frank, this is Audrey. I've known you for many, many, many years in the title world and escrow and whatnot. And I want to tell you a little story, and I will be brief, but I don't know if you knew back in the olden days with the title and escrow people, we identified all the eligible bachelors that were out there in the community. And you were one of them at one point, but Miss Cindy caught your heart. And we are so happy you guys are together and retiring and enjoying yourselves. I appreciate that you gave me the opportunity to at least hear about the board and helping to expand my knowledge. Even though I know real estate, the water world is so wonderful. And I appreciate that you brought me into that world. And you know what? You know, we're gonna never forget you. All your experience, all your knowledge. We wish you could download your knowledge onto a drive so we have it, but we can't. But we'll remember you at least every other Tuesday because your name is on the sign out front. So don't worry about being forgotten. You will always, Frank. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Frank, this is Rob. I just want to let you know it's been a real pleasure working with you. You know, I know we haven't always agreed and we've debated vigorously about things, but you've been really instrumental in my water education. And I see the debating as, you know, really democracy in action. So I appreciate all of the time that I've gotten to work with you and spend with you. You have served this agency well for 35 years. And what I've noticed about you, you really took an ownership interest in the agency. I mean, you felt it was your business. And I think public servants need to do that more often when they spend money, when they make votes. They should be looking at it as though they have ownership interest in it, because we really do, but we're doing it for the people. So I appreciate that. And I think that's the lesson that you taught me. And, you know, I really want to thank you for your service. Over 35 years, just incredible. And it has been a real pleasure working with you, and congratulations in your retirement, Frank.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the staff, Holly and Matt.
Yeah, I'll say a few things. Thank you. Good evening, Frank. This is Matt. So I think I speak on behalf of the entire staff. We're really going to miss you. You've always been a huge supporter of not only just me, but the entire AVEK staff when it comes to salaries and benefits for the staff, and always encouraging them to do their best. You've been a great servant to the agency, and we're really going to miss, you know, your humor that you brought, especially at the finance committees. You made us all chuckle at times. And wish you a happy, healthy retirement with your beautiful wife, Cindy.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, Frank, thank you for almost 15 years of working with me. And we really came around from day one when my first PE, and you were yelling at Andy, and I was so afraid. Poor Andy. And I remember you laughed, and after I could hear you guys yelling, like he says, everything okay? I just appreciate you so much working with me and teaching me things about water, and we learn from each other. And I've just had a wonderful 15 years working with this board, especially you. And I thank you for everything you've done for the agency. You really went above and beyond public service, and that's what it looks like, it should look like to everybody. So thank you so much for everything you've done. Best wishes.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you. Council would like to make any comments or public, everybody's welcome. Okay, you know, Frank. Okay, yeah, John, you can stand.
Frank, this is John Eucasted. You're very fortunate to have met me 35 years ago. And I do wish you a lot of luck. Have a good life, guy. Bye.
Okay, buddy. Thank you.
Yeah, you know, Frank, this is tough.
Well, I'd like to say something. I want to thank everybody who's actually supported me from, I was like 28 or 29 years old when I actually first ran, and George was I was appointed on the Regional Planning Commission from Mike Antonovich back in the day, and a few people said, hey, there's an open seat coming. And I remember Charlene Lane, and I didn't know George, and talked to her. She says, you need to talk to my husband. He knows a few people around town. So I ran, and my whole goal was I had two very strong opponents. One was a captain at the Mary Loma Sheriff's over there on and 90th, and then the superintendent, Duke Smith. Everybody knew them, and somebody said to me, what are you going to do to beat them? You're just a kid. And I said, I'll tell you how I'm going to beat them. I will hit a door knock 1,000 homes between now and election day. And I did. And I think that was a big thing, but George pointed me in the right direction. And I've met a lot of very interesting people being on this AVEK board, and then the people that you guys are doing the same thing now, the newer people in the last 10 years. But, everybody needs water, and AVEK has got the best plan going forward with the water banks. And I would put our money into those banks, because sooner or later, and of course, we already saw the biggest water company in the world is going to dump water in the Antelope Valley. And there's going to be others. So just continue building water banks and exchanging values and make it happen. So I'll be around. I just I have a lot of things going on right now in my life with good things, all good things, and with a lot of things going, with just a lot of busy things. But anything, staying healthy, staying strong, and smiling is what it's all about. So I thank all of you, and we'll talk soon.
Well, Frank, you'll be missed. And I first remember having lunch with you in 1986 at the Desert Inn before the election, trying to give little pointers and advice. And knowing you before that, you were on like we said, you were on the county, planning and advisory, committee, and which is a very active committee. And I think we still have some of those books left that are probably 2 feet high on the county general plan. But the years you've been with AVEK, there's been five general managers. We've built water banks, and you were instrumental in pushing the water banks, which is going to be there for generations to come, forever, right there. And the Valley residents will never forget those, and someday they're going to be so important where they are right now, but they're going to be more important as time goes on. You've done so many different things in your life besides being well respected in the title industry. You had a winery, you raised buffalo, and not many directors have done that. I mean, you did so many different things. You were a baseball coach. You coached, my son Justin in baseball, and you've been on the fair board, and you had a radio show at one time. You've just done so many things. Everything you've done, you've been successful. And what you brought to AVEK, your financial expertise, has literally saved taxpayers millions upon millions of dollars. And you have a lot of business sense, and that's rubbed off to the AVEK. And I don't know if many people realize that, but the amount that you've saved AVEK is tremendous, especially on the redevelopment agencies. You've saved tens of millions of dollars, on those. But and I know in your next phase of your life, you're going to be very active, and knowing you're never gonna stop, and you're always going to be active and successful, whatever you do. And just don't forget us, and hopefully you'll listen in. And you hope we can talk to you from time to time. But Frank, you'll be missed, and thank you for everything you've done. And there's
Thank you for those.
some nice conditions is going to be forwarded to you. We have one from them. We have two. We have some of them plus the record resolution. So with that, I think we'll if nothing further from the board or anyone. We're going to go into closed session, and we'll take about a 5-minute break. But we need a motion to go into closed session.
Mr. President, I move we go into closed session.
Second.
Give me a motion in a second, Madam Secretary.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, motion carried and so ordered. Thank you. We'll take a 5-minute break.